Day 3. Ensenada, Baja California, Mexico. This would be my third time in Ensenada, and yet my first time really experiencing it on my own. My first was back in February 2005 on the same cruise, and my first cruise, but aboard the Carnival Paradise, my first ship, and it was a very different place at the time. The efforts they've been making since at least the 2010s to clean it up and make it safe for visitors, as well as locals, cannot be understated. This is the destination I did the most research on, both historically as well as planning, learning as much Spanish as I could while I was at it. The second time was toward the end of the pandemic, as the world was just starting to open up on the same cruise, but aboard the Carnival Miracle, this time during Halloween week, October 2021, and I took a $40 bus tour as recommended by a table mate, where we were also taken to La Bufadora, about 25 miles or 40.2 kilometers from the cruise terminal, a 40-minute drive. I highly recommend this tour if it's your first time visiting Ensenada. It's equivalent, I believe, to either the 4-hour La Bufadora adventure excursion or more likely the 5.5-hour Ensenada Top 10 excursion that takes you virtually everywhere, as you will see on the Carnival website today. I have them linked below in the description for anyone interested. I had a more casual breakfast at the Lido Marketplace buffet this time. I was mostly good about my diet, but I couldn't seem to resist two of my favorite childhood cereals, Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Lucky Charms. Just not together, don't worry. I also had a moment to admire some of the nautical woodwork on the Lido staircases, and view the city from every possible vantage point, including right by the funnel on the golf course, and the boat deck promenade, of course. The red building once had a bar in it back in 2005, but I think it's completely void and empty as of now for some reason. Seeing the ship from a tender is one thing, but being able to walk onto a dock and stare up at the ship for as long as you want has its own charms, and there is something about looking up and realizing you were aboard it for 2 days. It's an odd dynamic you just don't get from static buildings on land. The plan was to walk my way to all the major sites, as I experienced both in 2021 and in 2023 in Mazatlan. The safely curated bus tours kind of have the effect of being in a fishbowl, so I was about to embark on quite the opposite type of adventure this time. My first place to visit, completely off the beaten track, would be Our Lady of Guadalupe, properly titled Catedral de Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe, located, I found out, about 1.3 miles from the cruise terminal via Avenida Floresta. It is magnificent, and you can see it so clearly from the ship. It is so big and grand. There doesn't seem to be any excursions to this absolutely magnificent church, and probably for good reason that I'll shortly go into. I'll admit the journey there was a bit sketchy. I had my defenses up and ready, and took out my phone very sparingly. The streets were uneven, very smoggy, and I definitely got some "what are you doing here" looks from certain people, but overall it was super safe. I saw plenty of women walking on their own, for example. It was just not in great shape. There are some serious efforts by local advocates to clean up the streets, fix the portholes, and make the quality of life better for residents. It was also nice getting the authentic local experience. After a little over a mile of walking, there she was, and what a glorious experience. Just as grand and stoic as I expected. I think the reason excursions don't go here is because it is an active church where people go throughout all hours of the day, the open hours of the day, to pray. Right away, people were bowing before they entered the pews and the altar. I felt awkward at first taking photos and videos, but received only smiles, and also did so as indiscreetly as possible. It was so quiet and so peaceful, a complete contrast to the chaotic, stressful energy right outside. A very holy place that I wanted to respect as much as possible. sat at different pews from different vantage points to awe and wonder, really taking my time. I was so satisfied. If this was the only place I was able to visit while in Ensenada, I would be just fine. Was shocked to discover that it was built in 1951 and consecrated in 1987. Not nearly as old as I expected, especially compared to the Mazatlan Basilica opened in 1899, but like giving 1799. Really an amazing building, and perfect to visit if you're on a Mexican Riviera cruise. I saw the food place that I was looking for and heard about, Tacos Floresta, that I originally discovered from a Spanish YouTuber with ridiculously enviable production value that has apparently been around forever. The shop, that is. Open 365 days out of the year, voted best fish tacos in Ensenada, and so I went there for my mariscos, where I also got a few "what are you doing here" looks from certain patrons. I politely but very shyly asked in the best Spanish I could, "un camarón y un pescado, por favor?" They were able to exchange my $10 American bill, giving me what I'm sure was the equivalent to $5 in return in Mexican pesos. It was all a very enriching and mutually respectful experience. I wanted to say more, like how I discovered them, how I found out about them, but was so shy and nervous, especially with my limited Spanish. I ate these two decked out tacos as I walked back to the more touristy section. The breading was phenomenal, though the fish and shrimp both kind of melted with all the toppings I added, and I couldn't really taste the mariscos part of it, but I still remember the flavor of the breading so well, which I can't equate to anything I've had elsewhere. Also, give me those homemade masada corn tortillas any day. I then visited the free-to-enter State Center for the Arts, where I discovered more about the efforts to improve the quality of life in the city. Some very beautiful exhibits too. I would highly recommend going off the beaten path, probably better with at least one other person, but getting outside of yourself like that, expanding your comfort zone, and getting immersed in the culture is priceless. Next, also the highlight of my visit, was the Museo de Historia de Ensenada, otherwise known as the Hotel Pacifico, from its illustrious 1930s past, which is around the time it was built. Not to be confused with Museo Histórico Regional de Ensenada, that used to be a jail that was on my list but never got to see because I just couldn't find it, or the one that people confuse with this one on Avenida Gastelum. This is where all the famous stars from the golden age of Hollywood escaped to for their escapades, especially during Prohibition. Absolutely crazy to think that this heavily industrialized area used to be a scenic tropical beach resort front, practically, where the Lázaro Cárdenas Street is now. Used to be all beachfront, like a cozy little cove. Progress is wild, for better and for worse. And they are taking huge measures to restore these grounds and make it a quiet and romantic haven for locals to get away from the stress of the city. And there were plenty of young couples just hiding underneath trees and stuff. Talk about stepping back in time. Every little corner was immaculately detailed in this hybrid Spanish colonial Art Deco building that I wanted to be my house, and I could just picture the likes of Clark Gable, one of the many famous celebrities who ventured in and out of there, all over this joint. Obviously it had a bar, or at least 3 during its time, but it also used to house a casino. The place represents so much for Ensenada and Baja California in general. It is a symbol of its once very prosperous economy, since it brought in so much money with all those wealthy celebrities, following its steady decline after World War II, and its continuous hope for the future as they steadily restore it and make it a safe haven for locals and tourists alike. Back in 2021, most of it was still closed off, so we only got to see and go into the bar where we could try samples of the margaritas there and sit in the courtyard for a little while, which when you enter is immediately forward, by the way. It's the first thing you see and are able to go to. Getting to see everything this time, though, and freely on my own, was absolutely magical. The Basilica and the Hotel Pacifico were all that I needed to see. I easily could have stayed and walked around these grounds all day and maybe have one of the famous margaritas, ? But I had so many other places to check off my list, and heavy liquor like that doesn't take much for me and doesn't always sit right while we're at it. I already have autism and an autoimmune disease without alcohol to further flummox my already neurodivergent brainwaves. When I backtracked to Avenida Adolfo Lopez Mateos, very similar to the famous street in Mazatlan, this street led me to the historic district where I purchased some old cold churros for $5 and felt like such a tourist walking around with them. There's some advice. Purchase churros from a stand producing them in real time, like I did at La Bufadora back in 2021. I took a quick glimpse into the famous Husong's Cantina, very and unusually quiet at this time, with this security guard that kind of intimidated me at first, but was very friendly and let me go in just fine. Finally made it to the Malecon, the boardwalk, also known as Turistico on Google Maps, and it was a very peaceful, spacious experience. The interactive water spouts, the Fuente Interactiva Ventana, was being worked on, though. Kind of cool to see it turned inside out. Sad not to see the water spouting or for it to be open, but a cool experience all the same seeing them work on it. Passing by the Baja Naval Boat Repair Shop was really cool. So many charming boats and yachts in such pristine condition, by the way. I then visited the famous Símbolos Históricos de Ensenada, a charming boardwalk with a boat said to have been salvaged from under the sea and turned into a display piece, one made completely of concrete. Was it from World War II? And a very heart-wrenching statue of a sailor's wife and their son looking out to find their missing seafaring husband who's been out at sea for who knows how long. It was a very charming, scenic, and at the same time stoic and humbling little boardwalk at the end of the Malecon, and a great segue into lunch. That's right, I finally made it to the Mercado Negro, or the Black Market. How cheeky. Where I heard the authentic fish tacos of this seafood-bearing town to be located, and I got pitched to several times to eat at the restaurants there, which I very well might do in the future. My goal was to check out the oh-so-famous Taco Lucero that all the YouTubers talk about, but I was talked into eating at Tacos Ensenada right next door and at the corner edge, where just like at Tacos Florestas, I got both a fish and shrimp, or pescado y camarón, then went to Tacos Lucero for just one camarón as well as an horchata, bottled, not homemade as it were, and both locations were equally as delectable. While the breading wasn't nearly as flavorful as it was at Florestas, it was crispier, and the flavor of the camarón especially was more prevalent in a positive way, and the owners at Lucero's were camera ready. Like, they had the most TV listo personalities. They've been there, done that. And the corn tortillas were a little better, a little more homemade tasting and textured than the ones at Tacos Ensenada, but they were each as equally as good. You could go to either one and have just as beautiful an experience. It was a little past 3:20 p.m. at this point, and it felt more like 6 p.m. to my wary body. My stomach was starting to malfunction, probably for very understandable reasons, and I was even pretty dizzy. I realized that dehydration must have played a big factor in this. I don't think I had any water since I left the ship at 11 a.m. the same day. I gradually made my way back, and the Malecon was surprisingly very quiet. Fellow guests must have been back on the ship or still on their excursions, as there are many offered in Ensenada. It was so quiet and such a road less traveled at the time that it felt like 2021 all over again to me. I slowly made my way back and almost went to the aquarium across from the cruise terminal. It wasn't even 3:40, and I had exactly 1 hour left. Deadline for boarding was 4:45 p.m. for context, but I was too tired and my entire body was decombusting, and I had to get some water and recover. All that fried oil and gluten and sauces with egg. One of the entertainment personalities welcomed us back. Wonderful walking toward the ship, because you have all the more time to admire its size and the workmanship that went into it. At the flavored water station right outside, I slowly drank maybe half a gallon's worth. It helped. I wasn't in any kind of a hurry and, got to admire the ship that much longer. Headed back up to my stateroom to freshen up and I considered joining most people up on the Lido, but I think I just needed some peace and reflective quiet, and that bow view directly below the bridge is just so cozy and iconic. It was like I was on Titanic. After all, I still had a great view of most everything I felt I needed to see, including the gangplank. I shouldn't have been surprised, but somehow very much was, to see no less than 2 sets of pier runners. The first, a fast-moving couple at about 4:48 p.m. after call time. The second at 4:50, which was about 15 straight minutes after call time. You could hear the jeers from the Lido, and these pier runners were both casual and not quiet about it at all. I believe I have the short already posted, but here is a little glimpse of the entertaining moment. Was surprised to see a few other people having the same idea on this secret deck. A seal was nearby and making a loud noise. The ropes went splash. The horn sounded at exactly 5:02 p.m. At the bow, you could really feel the bow thrusters, which was cool and exciting for me. And we were off. What an absolutely surreal experience leaving a dock. I just can't get over the nature of a ship and how it works, and the effects of moving from place to place on this big, heavy, floating steel city at sea. While I wondered if I should have regretted not being up on the Lido with everyone else, I'm pretty confident it was super crowded and would probably be hard to find a place to stand or sit to enjoy departure, so the peaceful forward-facing bow was the perfect spot for me as I watched Ensenada get further and further away with some very unique and mysterious landmarks, like this giant tanker that looked abandoned and the shore operators in a giant tower that looked more like a traffic controller station at an airport. The big muster station promenade on Atlantic Deck was always open, and I think I was allowed, but it was full of crew so much of the time I was afraid of getting in their way, so I only ever caught glimpses like this one as we departed Mexico. By 5:18 p.m. I was back at the lobby deck promenade where I know I was allowed. Both port and starboard had their own charming perspectives of Ensenada as we sailed away from it. I can't stress enough how dumb it felt to have to walk across the atrium each and every time to get from one side of the promenade to the other. Why did they design the ship like this? The port side was the side you could see the ship turning the most and that produced the most wake, which is so life-giving. There was an authentic Spanish duo playing in the atrium. I spent some time in my stateroom cleaning up before heading to Bonsai Sushi, which I thought would be my dinner, most likely. I can't say much about Bonsai Sushi because when I explained all my allergies, which the host inquired about right away, she acted like my nutritionist and would practically not allow me to have anything that contained all of what I was allergic to. And although it may sound like I'm complaining, I'm actually really thankful. I was still slowly getting over all that grease and gluten after all. 5 tacos total with a sizable bag of old churros on the side. The host made extra effort to make sure I was safe, and I was made a modified sashimi tuna avocado roll that, despite a lack of any egg soy enriched sauce, something to really make it taste better, was such legit quality and so good on its own. I can still taste the sharp, firm, robust, fresh, buttery combination of the creamy tuna, rice, and sesame seeds. Just look at the vibrant red that piece of tuna is. I love sushi and live in Orange County, for crying out loud, and yet I haven't had a roll that good for as long as I can remember. It was the perfect segue into the main dining room where I had pre-ordered ceviche with rice crackers, some enriching green veggie soup, and a garden salad with what seemed like house-made balsamic vinaigrette dressing, and these incredibly melt off the bone spare ribs with fries and corn that I couldn't finish. And I didn't even think about bringing Ziploc bags. And I made it on time this time for the PM performance where servers go above and beyond to entertain us. It goes to show that while allergies are limiting, there are some incredible options for those with allergies. I'm allergic to everything, and yet there were some very good options for me. And if you make sure to plan ahead, preferably the day before, but even the meal before, they can even modify certain dishes for you so that you never feel left out. And it really refreshed my upset stomach too, all this good for the gut produce I was provided. I he'd emphasized that I had to repeat to 3 different servers that evening that I already had a planned menu because of my allergies. Something was going down in the Sunset restaurant that evening because it was chaotic, but they were also really polite and even conversational, and I had a wonderful time. I know I went to bed earlier than usual. My last photo is from 8:35 p.m. of this beautiful clock that I feel was left over from her victory days. I just don't think I had it in me to wander the upper decks or indulge in the midnight buffet this time, and with TCM and Ship of Fools at hand, my balcony cabin was the best place to be that night. I did pay extra for it, after all. When I didn't have the live cam on, I pretty much had TCM on all day. I was exposed to so many Golden Age Hollywood actors and films, and in the correct aspect ratio on the Radiance, that alone made it all worth it for me. The next day was the fun day at sea. Get ready for my review of Fahrenheit 555, the ropes course, and so very much more.